The Uniting Church in Australia has entered the second decade of its life. Like other denominations, we exist in a rapidly changing social environment. Since union, we as members of the church have gone through a time of great change and adjustment. For many, it's been a time of grief, of seeking new ways of working together, of grasping new opportunities for service and witness. We should be encouraged by what has been accomplished, but at the same time we need to look below the surface of our parishes and the communities in which we serve, and we need to ask some important questions about the kind of future open to the Uniting Church. We must start now, because a close examination already shows the Uniting Church is aging. Attendances have fallen, and the value of our giving, particularly to the wider work of the church, has been diminishing. It is too easy to blame society for these problems, to blame the highly mobile young families, business pressure, working women, unemployment, immigration, and self-centered youth, to look out there for the reasons. Few, if any, of the mainline denominations have either the courage or the sensitivity to recognize that it is they, it is us, who have lost contact with the majority of the people. In our flurry to keep open the doors, is it possible that we have lost sight of why we keep them open? Open to be the people of God working in the world? Have we allowed apathy, or worse, our individualistic thinking, to stand in the way of God's work? Have we become so attached to the status quo that we have shifted our responsibility for change to God to provide if and when it is needed? God has provided change, but we have not always recognized it, nor have we responded to it. In a world which is now in the greatest need of God's love, God's truth, God's justice, we have very little influence on the life of the world. By far the greatest decrease in church attendance has occurred in the 18 to 29 age group. By projecting attendance levels using 1986 as the base year, we can estimate that by the year 2006, we will have 16% fewer people aged 19 years and over attending church. By the year 2026, that could be 25% fewer people aged 19 years and over. It is clear that churches in Australia have lost contact with the majority of people. By the early 1980s, 52%, or more than half the population, had not attended a service of worship for more than a year. And the number grows each year. The statistics also show that Australian churches have become less attractive to the disadvantaged groups in our communities. We have tended to gear ourselves to the needs and interests of the better educated upper class of society. Population movement and tragic economic pressures are having a severe impact upon many rural communities. In some country presbyteries, parish ministry, as we've known it, is strained due to these economic pressures, and some parishes are becoming unviable. They are in danger of losing their resident minister, and they are in fear of having to close their doors. The Uniting Church will virtually disappear from many significant sections of our cities if it fails to become seriously involved with the increasing multicultural character of urban Australia. We need to respond, as Christ would, to the various ethnic congregations in our midst, but not as real estate agents. Renting properties to Tongans and Koreans will not give us an understanding of their struggle, of their need. It puts us, and therefore Christ, on the outer edge of their world as uninvolved observers. We should be developing multicultural congregations so we can become the church which is representative of the whole Australian community. But instead of seeing these needs as new opportunities for mission and service, we have tended to shrink from the new and the challenging. We have sought comfort in the known and the familiar. In his book, A Matter of Death and Life, John Bodicum paints three scenarios for the future of the Uniting Church. Paraphrased here, they describe the lives of the three churches. The first is of an aging, contracting church, with congregations shrinking to elderly enclaves and becoming progressively less attractive to young people, while those on the fringes just drift away. The declining resources of such a church force curtailment of the programs and of trained leadership, accelerating the process of decline. The second scenario is the maintenance church, which has a tendency to undertake only what is known and what has been proved. This church is reluctant to take risks or to encourage change. And finally, the imaginative church, an innovative and creative church seeking contact with the larger community and promoting its message effectively and with imagination. This church has a great sense of urgency and enthusiasm about living out the gospel, about worship, mission, witness, and service. Clearly, we would want to be the third church, the imaginative one. But which one are we? Think beyond our own parishes. Think of our church across Australia. Which one are we? Our vision must be to become the imaginative church. To do so, we must resist the temptation of seeing our problems as falling attendances and shrinking budgets. They are not the problems. They are merely the results of other, more basic issues. It is not too late to become the imaginative church, for we are a people with hope. But it is going to demand a high level of change from everyone. We must find new and creative ways of sharing our life as a church, and we must continually discover better ways to do God's work. For some of us, this will mean painful change as we surrender old ways, traditions, and things which have become so very dear to us. Synods and presbyteries will need to provide caring support to those who find change painful. Those ministers who seek to introduce change to parishes which want to resist. Those parishes which want to change and find ministers hesitant to undertake the new. If we're to become the imaginative church, we must encourage every minister, every council, and every member within the church to actively and enthusiastically direct their energies towards change and renewal. Renewal through obedience to God, leading to the making of disciples. Renewal through bridging the gulfs which exist between our church and the various groups in the community by being open and available to their needs. Renewal through new forms of worship and by developing new patterns of church life which are more appropriate to our cultural situation. While it is the Spirit of God which gives true renewal to the church, it is our responsibility to examine ourselves, both individually and as a church, and identify those things which stand as obstacles in the way of God's renewing. And this renewing Spirit of God may lead us as a church into new initiatives far beyond our planning or expectations. To be the imaginative church, we must resolve a number of important issues which stand between us and the vision of tomorrow. If we are to retain our relevance in the community, then we must continue to find ways of relating to young people, recognizing that they have a great deal to contribute to the church. They have gifts and skills, but above all, they have young attitudes from which we can learn. We must learn to relate to and to nurture people from disadvantaged groups, those involved in family breakdown, ethnic communities, those in need. We must continue to encourage and to embrace the older members of the church, recognizing that they have given many years of faithful and dedicated service. And we must learn how to support and encourage each other, as all of us struggle with complex issues and face the distress and emotional responses of being confronted by change. An imaginative church is an inclusive church. The situation faced by the uniting church today, by us, requires that we look at ourselves and at our particular mission situation carefully and critically. We need to relate the whole of our church life to the changing situation in which we now find ourselves in new and creative ways. The current trends are not unalterable. There are stories of hope emerging from some of our parishes. There are mission opportunities open to the church in a variety of areas, but these opportunities can only be grasped if we have the courage to face the need for change. Change based on hope rather than anxiety, frustration, or fear. As pilgrims in search of a new understanding of what it means to be the people of God in a hurting world, we must always be open to the renewing Spirit of God. Without this openness to change, we place at risk this uniting church which God has called into being in Australia.